Okay, guys, this is my first time ever doing one of these, so please bear with me as I try to figure it out. But as you can see from my title page, that my topic was physical activity, fitness, cognitive function, and academic achievement in children, and this was a systematic review of various literature. I will not insult anyone's intelligence in reading this slide to you. Just know that these two questions were what was referenced throughout the study and was the main purpose of it. Continued on this slide, you can see that there are two separate searches that went into the previous questions. And the second bullet point is the databases that they searched through, and in parentheses, the time frame that they were using. The first question, they had 64 studies that met the inclusion criteria. The second question, there were 73 studies. And this gives us a grand total of 137 studies that they were going through. So this slide right here is some background information that I found in the review, and I like both of these statements just because they're very contradictory and have kind of given us the ideologies that are now in the school systems as of right now. Once again, I don't want to insult anyone's intelligence in reading this to you, but feel free to pause this and read through them because I think they're both very good statements. Um, the methods page right here. In class on Tuesday, Lauren and Hannah and Brittany and Juana all referenced this multiple times. This is just how the people in this paper graded the strong evidence that supported the different questions that they raised. So once again, I'm not going to read any of this off to you. Just know the category of A is strong evidence, the category of C is weak. So question one, as I said before, there are 64 studies that went into question one addressing it, and below it is just the different study types that went into it, and we'll be breaking this down further as we go on. So as you can see in the title here, I have specific parts bold and underlined, and what they did is they broke down the question itself and focused on the literature that best apply to these boldface words. So right here, I've got cross-sectional, longitudinal, and cohort studies underneath study type, and then the findings on the right. So I'm only going to read the boldface words here. If you want to go back and read more in depth, feel free to. But you can see results from 11 cross-sectional studies generally supported beneficial relationships among physical activity or aerobic fitness and cognitive function. And the longitudinal, there were only 2 longitudinal studies that indicated higher fitness is associated with better cognitive performance. And all the cohort studies showed some support for cognitive benefits associated with greater or enhanced activity levels. So once again here, I'm just going to be addressing the different study types. There were 8 studies in a laboratory setting for acute physical activity, and the overall findings supported a beneficial relationship between acute physical activity and cognitive performance. There were 8 studies that were conducted in a school setting for acute physical activity, and they found that there's no evidence of deleterious effects, which is them just saying that there's no harmful effects of them doing the exercise on the kids' cognition and learning. And the results of studies using random control trials designs, they held the strongest evidence, and that was particularly for executive functioning tasks. So the literature summary and study quality of physical activity, fitness, cognition, and learning. There were only 2 studies that reported having sufficient statistical power relative to their analysis of the effects of chronic physical activity for cognition. And given that changes in brain function or structure may underlie changes in cognitive performance, this evidence is consistent with an expectation that physical activity and cognitive performance are sometimes causally linked. So still addressing question 1, we're just now doing physical activity, fitness, and brain structure. This one actually had the least amount of attention in the field to date, and they only found 5 studies in the entirety of the 64 studies. So with the cross-sectional, there are only two cross-sectional studies that suggested cognitive functions would support specific subcortical structures rather than a more global influence. And the random control trial studies also suggested this. So that was just the study saying that rather than physical activity targeting the brain as a whole, it only targets specific sections of the brain. And this is once again another literature summary and study quality. So the data collected thus far points to a relationship among physical activity and aerobic fitness with specific brain structures that support executive functioning and memory. These findings are encouraging, but they are very preliminary and should serve to motivate future research. And now we're going to be looking at physical activity, fitness, and brain function. And this is just a brief overview of what went into it. So in the cross-sectional studies, the results from these studies indicated that high-fit children would exhibit faster cognitive processing speed, and results from 6 of the random controlled trial studies found that children receiving physical activity exhibited adjustments in specific portions of the brain, and that reiterates what we found with the brain structure research. So overall, the findings support the benefits of daily physical activity on the neural network supporting executive functions. And these findings indicate that physical activity interventions may improve brain function not only in response to environmental demands, but also while at rest. So to bring all this information together, I have this slide here. And this is just where like everyone previously said on Tuesday, I just put the category rating of what they had in the review. So at the very bottom, you can see where I've got bold and underlined. They gave the category rating a B. So there was some strong evidence to support the claim and the question that they're looking at, but there's still more research needed in order to validate everything. So question 2 now is the physical activity, physical education, sports programs, academic achievement, and concentration and attention. And once again, you'll see the breakdown of the different studies that they found within the 73 articles that they looked at. So we'll be addressing first physical activity, physical education, sports programs, and academic achievement. And in the cross-sectional studies, there was mainly positive associations, but there were sometimes unclear and inconsistent in their methodologies and findings. The longitudinal study showed that students who increased their fitness or maintained fitness across time had higher academic achievement scores than students who did not. So to summarize what we just saw, the literature that has examined the relationship between physical fitness and academic achievement in children demonstrates largely positive findings. However, there were some inconsistencies within the findings, likely because of their measurement approach. The studies had further limitations with regard to study quality and reporting. So now looking at physical activity, academic achievement, and concentration and attention. The research here did not find much in the cross-sectional studies. The studies were inconsistent and even contradicted themselves. In the acute physical activity, there's no definite conclusions made. And in the physical activity interventions, there were some positive effects on mathematics scores, with the exception of studies that examined classroom physical activity breaks, which had no effect. So once again, to summarize everything, from the small subset of studies, it would seem that physical activity in the classroom has more effect when the physical activity is integrated into the curriculum rather than being implemented as a break from academic content. And this is, once again, another finding that may need further investigation and research. Now we're going to look at physical education, academic achievement, concentration, and attention. In the cross-sectional studies, there was only one study that found positive results, and they surveyed the students rather than the teachers and administrators. In the acute physical activity, um, there was no positive effect on physical activity and attention. In the longitudinal research, they only found positive results for girls versus boys, and this was a 6-year study that they looked at. And in the physical activity intervention, there was no positive results. So the studies that have examined relations between physical education and academic achievement have generally found no association or null results. And these studies suffer from a lack of control designs, reliance on self-report, and no measurement of intervention fidelity. So overall, most of the research to date so far was just poorly designed and reported. So to summarize, the question 2, we're just going to give it a category rating of C as what was deemed in the research, just because there's quite a bit of limitations in the literature and there was just not very positive findings overall. So to summarize, the cognitive function, academic achievement, and the cognitive function, the bulk of the research findings support the view that physical fitness and single bouts of physical activity and participation in physical activity interventions benefit children's mental functioning. In particular, the cross-sectional studies consistently revealed that physically fit children perform better on cognitive tests than the less fit. With academic achievement, given that regular physical activity may result in specific as opposed to global effects on children's cognitive function, it is plausible that the methods of measuring academic performance may explain the lack of agreement among studies. So to conclude everything that I've covered thus far, we can say that overall the literature suggests that physical activity has a positive effect on cognition and academic achievement, whereas attempts to increase physical education have a neutral effect on academic achievement. Regardless of the effects of physical activity and physical education on cognition and academic achievement, physical activity is widely acknowledged to contribute to health and physical development of children. So changes in public policy are likely needed to systematically improve incentive and direction for increasing physical activity in elementary schools. So I hope you all enjoyed my little TED Talk here and I didn't put you to sleep.